My boy Rece Davis joining the show, I think. There he is. Yes, sir. And by the way, I can see the jerseys behind you, and it's not anybody else's fault. It's mine because I have not given you one.
I
So
know.
I would have started with that and been like, "You humpy, you don't have a jersey behind me of me." But
How many times have I asked, David? How many
you've
times have I
asked.
asked?
You know what? Now I'll make sure I get it done now. How about that? Okay.
All right.
We'll get it done. And speaking of, to start, I want to thank you, first of all, Banquet of Blessings. Last year was the first year we did it. It was so cool. Rented out the Classic Center in Athens. We bust in a bunch of folks in the surrounding area in need. We gave them clothes. We gave them food. And Rece was a huge part of that, making it happen and supporting that again. So thank you, my brother. We appreciate you.
Oh man, I mean, my wife Lee and I were just so blown away by what you and Lindsay and your entire family were doing for people in that community and your love for people. And we're happy to be a small part of it, man. You are an inspiration. When you called me up last year to tell me about that, and basically it was sparked by reading one verse and trying to be obedient. I mean, that's really impressive, and we're 100% behind that. And I think it's going to be even bigger and better this year. And I can't wait to see the videos and hear about it.
We'll definitely share them with you. So we ain't got to do this in a while, Rece. So we can go wherever the flip you want to go. We
This
can
is
talk
like
about
role
whatever game.
reversal, Pollack. This is like
Yes.
role reversal. You're running. You're hosting.
So a little inside with Rece, by the way. There's nothing that bothered Rece more back in the day than when a producer said, "Hey, put it on a tee for the analyst." Like that, Rece would be like, "Oh, just put it on a tee. Yeah, just do that." By the way, after doing this some now, it really stinks and it's hard. It's a way harder than I ever thought it was. But Rece, I'll put it on a tee for you tonight. Okay. Like I'm
No,
just gonna.
you're participating in the conversation, David, because that's why I always told them. I would tell them, if you just want somebody to put it on a tee, I've got stuff I can do. I mean, you get a trained SEAL to go put it on a tee. But I'm never going to argue with you about moves or pass rush techniques or any of that kind of stuff. You gotta know where your limitations are, but be part of the conversation.
All right. Ohio State versus Penn State. What's the Rece Davis outline looking like? What are you looking for?
I think the biggest thing is, David, is we ran across Marissa Dowling shared with me a stat that was dug up by one of our data experts at True Media, Jason Starrett, who you probably know used to work with us, with Josh Simmons on and off the field. The stats are shocking. Ohio State can't run the football and he's out for the season. As you know, I'm gonna cheat a little bit and look at the numbers so I get them exactly right here in this file that I keep every week for the games. Okay.
Robust file.
Yeah.
It's got everything you could ever imagine about Ohio State, like the last 17 coaches. I mean,
Well, it's not.
everything known to man right there in that file.
But listen, since Simmons got hurt in the Oregon game, and the difference in the number of plays is negligible. I think it's a difference of 19 snaps. But when he was on the field, Ohio State ran for nearly 6 yards a carry, almost 4 yards before contact, and like 17% of their rushes went for 10 or more yards. When he hasn't been on the field, which is about 60 snaps, I think, yards per carry is down to 2.2. It's half a yard before contact, and 37% of their rushes have been stopped for 0 or negative yardage. And they haven't run for a touchdown without him on the field 5 times they did with him on the field. So I think I said all that to say, I think one of the biggest things is, can Ohio State run the football? Because I think they have to balance it out a little bit to be able to do one of the most dynamic things in college football, which is throw it to 4, throw it to Jeremiah Smith, get him the ball. But you're going to have to be able to run it some. And both these teams are really good on defense. I think that's the XO thing that I'm looking at first. I think Drew Aller's going to be healthy. Thamel's been all over that story for us. It looks as if he'll be, they're not going to be running him. I wouldn't think, but based on some practice video today, one would think he's going to, at the very least, give it a go and probably play. But then there's the bigger.
I'm going to ask you this:
Yeah,
Is
go
it
ahead.
fair to say this? We know the history of Penn State.
Right.
We know the history of Penn State, Ohio State,
Mm-hmm.
and is it fair to say in this game, and this is what I've seen so far, and this is what I saw last week, is it fair to say that that Penn State's offense might be more dangerous with Pribula at quarterback?
He threw the ball well. He's a really good athlete, as you know. I think Aller has really improved, and he's made more big plays through half of the season than he did all of last year in terms of pushing the ball down the field. But I know how much you love a quarterback who can run, and I think he's a guy who gives them that dimension. And from watching Andy Kotelnicki at Kansas, when Jalen
Knows what he's
Daniels was
doing.
yeah, when Jalen Daniels was healthy last year, he had like a whole package of plays where he used Daniels and Jason Bean, who ended up playing most of the year last year. And he did that a couple years ago too. So I'm not going to be surprised to see a whole lot of Bo Pribula and sometimes maybe on the field together, and not just using, not just doing the thing where you would do in a Wildcat where you put Aller outside the hashes and just force him to occupy somebody. They end up using both of the guys. So I don't know that I would say it's totally more dangerous, because I think Aller this year has proven, more proven passer, but certainly Pribula is a guy who played well the other night when he had to come in throwing the ball, and certainly is probably definitely more dangerous runner than Drew Aller is.
He's definitely a more dangerous runner. And I think the thing that makes me say that, Rece, is because I think the best players on Penn State's offense are 2 running backs and a tight end.
Mm-hmm.
And I think Pribula can use those guys just as effectively as Aller. Like Aller, yes, his patience is better. His pocket awareness is better. Like, he's more decisive when he takes off and runs. I love all that about him. I don't see the Penn State wide receivers of old that we used to see that could smash people out wide. And so if I'm going to use my best players on the field, and I think Kotelnicki's brilliant at this, and he showed you this at Kansas with Daniels, I think it is the 2 running backs. I think it's 3 running backs with Pribula, and then I think Tyler was an absolute Freaky Friday tight end. I really feel like, man, you can stress a defense sideline to sideline and make it cover every blade of grass with him at quarterback, and I think it utilizes their weapons the best.
It's going to be all of the things that he does, especially with Tyler Warren, but not exclusively. I mean, things like, putting guys in formation so he sends offensive linemen in motion to get blocks both on a run and a pass. I mean, there are a lot of different things. And then if you follow the philosophy of getting your best players the ball, and I think you're right. I mean, look the number of times that they got Tyler Warren the ball against USC. I mean, 17 catches or whatever it was. And, and then they can really run it. Both those running backs are good. And, I think this is their chance. And yet I still think, David, that Ohio State is one of the 2 or 3 most talented rosters. And even with the injury up front, it's just, I think I'm going to need to see it from Penn State to actually believe that they're going to beat a roster like that on a stage like this. And so I just need to see it. I think Penn State's really good. They're a playoff team. They're going to go regardless of whether they win on Saturday, in my judgment. But I think we'll find out if they are truly a threat to win the whole thing by how they play on Saturday.
Which I think, as if you've watched Penn State over the years, there's a reason you feel that way, Rece. Like, they've done it time and time again where you said they have a roster to compete with Ohio State, but they don't. All right. Next game that I think, speaking of teams that have something to show me, this isn't the biggest game, but I haven't seen Clemson play anyone since Georgia. And I'm buying Cade Klubnik's progress. I see it on tape. I see the pocket presence is a million times better than it used to be. I'm seeing shots down the field. I'm seeing this offense look better. Is this the week that we find out that Clemson is ready, and that team that is ready to compete for an ACC championship and a playoff-worthy team?
See, I agree with you. I mean, Clemson's ACC opponents, I think, are 7-18 or something like that in conference play. They haven't played anybody, but I like the way they look. And it's as if they've, I don't really know exactly whether, Dabo was, encouraging Garrett Riley to play it closer to the vest or not do this or not do that, in the Georgia game, or maybe Georgia just, does what it can do in big games like that. But they seem to have cut it loose a little bit more. Klubnik seems a lot more comfortable. And, I'm not sure that Louisville is the ultimate test, but it's certainly a bigger one than they've been having. So I'm with you. I'm buying Clemson. I think there's no rule against getting better. Just because they look totally outclassed in the Georgia game doesn't mean they have to stay that way. So I think Clemson's the best team in the ACC. And now Cam Ward is the guy at Miami that can make a difference in a game and might steal the game by himself. But the best team, the best roster, I think overall, I still think is Clemson.
Yeah. And then the problem with Clemson is, man, I do not see the defense we've seen in the past. Like the pass rush is a real problem. Like I don't, there's just so many guys that I can name out between Farrell and Christian and Big Dex and Brian Brussey, and we could go down the list. And I don't see the guy. I don't see the multiple guys that can get after the quarterback. And that's why I think we're going to find out against a really good passing attack with Louisville this week. Another great game, man. I think this has a chance to be an upset where you got A&M going to South Carolina. We've been there a bunch. That stadium is so freaking awesome. The fans are fantastic. Like, they're always ready to roll. That pass rush doesn't have to get ready because they stay ready, Rece. Every single week, they are ready to rush the quarterback and wreak havoc.
They're really close to having a much better record than they have. And the only thing that scares me about this one, David, is it seems like everybody's feeling the way you and I apparently do on this. Podcast that I do, I pick South Carolina to win the game. I think they're going to win the game.
Hey, baby.
I mean, they've got they've got problems protecting the quarterback, and I think it's going to be a low-scoring game. And even little things like they don't kick field goals as well as they have in the past. And you're probably going to need to make some field goals in this game. I'm really impressed with what Elko's done at A&M, but in this particular year, with the exception of, the ultra elite teams, Oregon, Georgia, Texas, and Ohio State, everybody else has had a game like this where they've lost. I mean, you could say, well, Georgia lost to Alabama. Maybe Alabama's not what they've been, but that's still that's not like Notre Dame losing to Northern Illinois or Alabama losing to Vanderbilt. No, Vanderbilt's improved, but or that weekend Tennessee losing to Arkansas, and all of that week where we had 5 of the top 11 lose to unranked opponents. Everybody else has lost a game exactly like the one that Texas A&M is going to play in Columbia Saturday night. And I think A&M is good. I think they've improved, but with those guys on the edge, you really think they're just going to let Marcel Reed run wild if he's the guy? And you really think Wigman has shown you enough that he's going to stand in there and get much done from a passing standpoint if they go to him? I just think those two guys.
Is there a QB decision to be made?
Oddly, I think there is. I mean, I know what happened. I know what happened Saturday night, and he's pushed the right buttons both times, because as you probably heard, when he came in the first time, when Connor Wigman was hurt, most of us, me too, kind of thought that and said, okay, well, Marcel Reed's going to be the guy. And Elko was he was hesitant on it. And he said, you know what? He hasn't played as well as you guys think he's played, the last couple of weeks. He's still making youthful mistakes. And there are things that Wigman does for us that helps our offense. And he put him back in there, and it looked like the right thing. And then, boy, he did not have his best night by any stretch of the imagination against LSU. And Elko, rolls the dice, and he hits it again. So I think this is going to be a thing that goes back and forth by situation throughout the course of the season. I fully anticipate Reed starting, because if he doesn't start, you risk losing the team. But it's not going to surprise me to see him struggle, and at some point A&M say, okay, we're going to need to see if we can get more of the passing game going, so we're going to try Wigman. Not going to surprise. And I think if it doesn't happen Saturday, it'll happen at some point later on during the season.
Yeah, I think I could definitely see that. I don't know how when you're down 17-7 and a dude comes in on a 21-0 run in 9 minutes that you go.
He's got to start, I think.
We're going to go to the other guy. Hey, we're going to. Yeah, no, I don't see that. I think that's the the easy starting point. And with those great pass rushers, man, like how do you slow them down? Having a great quarterback that can run, evade. I think that'll be a big
But
play. Last game,
he only threw 2 balls,
yeah,
against
he didn't need
LSU.
to.
Yeah, I know, because they kept crashing down, and like he said, they kept crashing down, so I just ran, and
I
he
mean,
did that
smart
brilliantly.
offense, but
Yeah.
I did think when LSU came back and scored and cut the deficit, then it's 1st and 10, and they had enough faith in him to throw a bomb down the field, and he delivered. So
Yeah.
that was a good sign too. But I think you can also I also didn't think LSU was ready for him. All right, last one. I'll put this one on the tee for you. Georgia, Florida. What do you think about this game? What do you thought about Georgia so far this season too? Kind of definitely not the dominance we've seen in the past from Georgia, but obviously still very good.
Well, I've been calling this game the world's largest outdoor mocktail party because Florida's going to have to play better before they merit, somebody raising a glass to them. Although some Florida fans
Ouch.
probably have been drinking things much harder than mocktails to try to get through this. I think I wouldn't be surprised if Florida jumps on them, scores 7 or 10 points and then, loses by 20. Georgia's one of the elite teams in the country. I think they battled a little complacency early. I would imagine that there's some heat that on Carson Beck internally. Is he going to be QB1 in the draft? He's going to put up the numbers. I think he's already turned it over more times this year than he did all of last year. And right now, if you ask me to pick who's going to win the national championship, I'm taking Georgia because they may not be exactly what they've been the last few years, but when Kirby made up all that stuff and got people agitated, nobody respects us, blah, 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 blah. I must have missed all the thank you notes for the nice stuff we said the last 3 years, Kirby. But at any rate, it got him wound up, and Michael Williams and Jalen Walker. They cost poor old Kelvin Banks so much money in Austin that night. And they were talking first tackle off the board. And then after the game, they're saying, that guy might have to be a guard. I don't know. It was, he's going to have to atone at some point and get that money put back in his pocket. But Georgia can do that to you. I still think their offense hasn't totally clicked the way it's capable, and it might not, because I don't see, I'm not trying to cast aspersions. I don't see dominant receivers. The guys that can take the top off might not be the most sure-handed guys in the world, and the more sure-handed guys aren't quite as explosive. So that probably adds a little bit of problem to it, and you lose a guy like Bowers. And it turns out, I guess, Lab McConkey's good at football. Not that those of us, everybody knew, but now the NFL knows too. And, so you're replacing some dudes. And, I still think they're, look, can Ohio State, Texas, if they play again, Oregon beat Georgia? Yeah, sure they can. But I still think Georgia is probably the team that I would be very reluctant to bet against.
Yeah, it's fun it was so good to hear you do that voice again, that little whiny voice again, that Kirby voice.
No, that was a Bill Raftery impersonation.
Yeah,
Yeah. Raftery used to do that when the coaches would come over to him before and complain about something. He says, "I must have missed all the thank you notes for the nice stuff I've said about you the last 25 years."
and by the way, man, it's not a surprise at all that Georgia played like that, because they had so many people doubting them, like so many people that were talking about what they haven't done. And it's so nice being a coach and knowing, and you have that, because it's so hard to coach the other way. And they went so long, I think since 20, with not being a road favorite. And then all of a sudden now, oh, you got no shot. Like, Kirby pouring gas all over that and got them all lathered up.
Let me ask you a question. I know it does. I'm not disputing that it does. Why does it work? Why does it work over and over and over again with players who all are smart? They have to know better. I know they kind of want it to work. Maybe that's part of it. Why does it work?
Because we're stupid. Like, I remember, Rece, some of the things that my coach said to me, like now, like Brian Van Gorder, like we played Arkansas in 2002. And I'll never forget, he was like, Pollack, like I got to pick my side, like whatever side I wanted to rush the passer on. He was like, hey man, just stay away from the right side. Sean Andrews is on that side. And I'm like, what? I'm pissed. You know me, Rece. Like
I know.
we are
Yeah.
so competitive and we are so like we don't get like the pats on the back, you get accustomed to and you get used to.
Yeah.
But when you tell me I'm not good enough or I don't belong, or I mean,
I
that
guess what I'm saying
soaks
though is, why in the world would Georgia believe that?
because everybody was picking Texas. Everybody thought
Yeah.
Texas was the better team. Everybody was patting Texas on the back and just so you had all this love coming one direction, and then everybody's like, "What's wrong with Georgia? Why isn't Georgia doing this? Why don't they look like Georgia?" And I think when you have that perfect storm, man, it's the reason I was like, "Georgia's winning this game." Like, no doubt, Georgia's winning this game.
I I'd like the record to reflect. I picked Georgia.
Was that one of those you went against everybody else, or was that?
I picked it before. I mean, it's documented and on tape, and I picked Georgia to win the game. Now some of the reason was just what you're saying. It was because everybody was saying Texas, and that was part of it. But and also part of it was what I just said. They're the team that I don't think they're invincible. I don't even think they're as good as they were last year. But they're also the team I'm not eager to bet against. So
Well, and that's why we have you on, because obviously the smartest, the
no, don't
best
say that.
looking, the best at teeing people up in the business. I mean, by
I only
far.
remember the ones I got right. Don't ask me about any of the ones I've gotten wrong. I don't want to know that.
No, but dude, I turn it on every weekend, man, to watch you. I mean, I just
Appreciate you, man.
I've always appreciated your friendship. You're the biggest professional I know, man. Always got the I's dotted, the T's crossed, and we'll get you on again. But appreciate you coming on and supporting your boy. And I promise you, I will get you a jersey to put behind you so we can take one of those down. I guarantee it. I promise.
Who should? Well, okay. My son's high school jersey is not coming down. So who's coming down? Mayday or Billis?
I think we can get Billis down. Then basketball season, we can put him back up. That seems
Okay.
fair.
All right. Yeah,
We
maybe
can do that.
Yeah, that's fair. I like that.
All right, deal.
All right.
Appreciate you supporting the banquet of blessings like always. Rece, you are the man. Thanks, brother.
Likewise, brother. Always great to see you, man.